The first thing that we need to talk about is what we call ontological choices. The reason that we need to talk about this is that ontology is one of the 5 main branches of philosophy, and it is the branch that deals with the nature of reality. So what are our underlying beliefs about the nature of reality? And this means that the other concept that comes very close to this is metaphysics. There is a nuance difference between the two. You don't really need to make the distinction, so you can treat the two concepts as if they were the same. So the primary thing about the ontological aspect is whether you believe that the world exists objectively outside you, or you believe that the world is there subjectively, that you are part of it, that it is part of you, and so on. Now, of course, this is not a real dichotomy. It is not like here is objectivism, here is subjectivism, and these are the only two, and you need to choose one or the other. You can more imagine it that there is a very, very long strand, and on one end you have some sort of extreme objectivism, and on the other end you have extreme subjectivism, and you are somewhere in between the two. The objectivist end is what we call naive realism. Naive realism means that basically we have absolutely nothing to do with reality. Reality is somewhere outside us. Now, if we have this sort of belief about reality, that it exists independently of us and outside of us, and that our inquiry does not interfere with that reality, then our research aim can only be to discover what is out there. And we will try to do all sorts of things to discover what is out there. Now, if we are on the subjectivist end, it is called, in ontological sense, it is called a relativist ontology, because it means that the reality is relative to us. So reality depends on me looking at it. By looking at reality, I partly create that reality. I cannot strictly separate the world that I am researching from myself. If I am doing any sort of research, I am affecting that reality and so on. In that case, my aim cannot be discovered to what is factually and objectively out there. My aim can only be to understand and interpret what I see of the world. So to understand the world and to interpret it my way, because my way is the only way available to me. Of course, these are the extremes, and of course there are many variants in between. We will get into that later on. Now, this is not the only dimension, although this is the most frequently mentioned dimension of ontological stance. Another dimension would be whether it is the nature of reality that things are in harmony or that things are in conflict. You can say, of course, that this is also not a real dichotomy, because you can say that there are, for example, different forces in reality, and the tension, the conflict of these forces is resulting in something, but this resulting something and the two forces together form a harmony. And when you get the two opposing forces, for example, you can come up with a more generic way of seeing that part of reality, then this becomes a harmony. But then you might find that this harmony is opposed to another force in some other dimension, and therefore there is again some sort of conflict and so on. So it is all about what we believe about the nature of reality. The
Next thing that is exceptionally important for research is whether we believe that things can be taken apart. So this is called reductionism, when the belief is that things can be reduced to components, and that way we can simplify them. Now, what is the story of that? It means that we can take, we see a reality which we cannot understand, so we take it apart, we understand this part and that part and that part, and from these parts we can put it back together, and it will still be the same reality. Now, as this can be traced back to the idea of the Greek concept of atom as the ultimate constituent of anything real, this extreme version of reductionism is also referred to as atomism. And then we have, on the other end, we have a systemist view, where the belief is that everything in reality forms systems, and this means that the parts cannot be examined in themselves, but that we actually need to consider these in a systemic view, so in relation to all the other parts. And the extreme version is referred to as holism, because it means that everything is connected with everything, and the only way how you can, I don't know, study this mug is that you look into its relationship to everything else. Now, it does not only mean that it is about the relationship with my coffee that is inside it, with my hand that is holding it, and if I am drinking it, then that part, but also how it relates to my room, how it relates to this part of the world and the next star system, and so on, so on, so on, everything in the known universe. So obviously, again, as with many, many things, these two are extremes, and there are many other things in between. And the final dimension of ontological stance that I wanted to mention is whether we believe that things are nomothetic or ideographic. Nomothetic means that things are all the same. So basically that if I see how one person behaves, based on that I understand how people behave, because all people behave the same. And the other end, so the opposite, would be ideographic, and it would mean that people are individual, that each of them behaves her or his own way, and therefore what I learn about one person does not tell me anything about another person. What I learn about one organization will not tell me anything about the other organization. Obviously, if we believe that reality is nomothetic, it will have all sorts of consequences on our research in terms of generalizability. So our findings will be generalizable and infinitely valid, while on the other hand, ideographic research leads to absolutely no generalizability in the extreme case, and it indicates a very heavy personal involvement in figuring out that idiosyncratic instance of reality. So in relation to this, what is a really funny thing is what Einstein said, and that reality is just an illusion, although a very persistent one. Now, how this sentence is interpreted obviously is also it is also possible in many different ways. So we can say that this means that reality is not objectively given, but it is based on our perception and so on. But it can also mean that the fact that it is a perception is an illusion in itself, and therefore we cannot really know much about the nature of reality in the first place. So this is just a kind of very, very quick introduction into what ontology is about and what sort of ontological considerations we might have in our research process. And we will get back to the ontological position of the major paradigms later on.